Hello and welcome. Today, Circuit Bridges will feature saxophonist Drew Whiting perform the works of contemporary composers Spencer Arias, Alexis Bacon, Christopher Chandler, and Monte Taylor. My name is Robert Voisey. I'm the director of Circuit Bridges, and I will be your host for this online virtual event. Circuit Bridges is a new music project looking to connect the new music community to audiences of vast distances. Endeavoring to support and empower musicians in these challenging times, Circuit Bridges features to champion musicians to present the works of living composers. This performance event contains specifically selected and curated compositions from an international call for scores that were submitted to the performer Drew Whiting. These online performances are presented live online so that audience can engage directly with the musician and the composers, be able to give them feedback and applause and ask questions and relate to the musicians and the composers directly. Today we are featuring saxophonist Drew Whiting, who is a member of the music faculty at the Silver Lake College and the University of Wisconsin Oshkosh, and co-directs the experimental music ensemble Sounds Like Now. Later, we'll get a chance to speak with Drew Whiting, but now I'd like to introduce him and the next piece that we're going to play, which is by Christopher Chandler, and his work is called A Thing of Dream and Mist. So without further ado, let's listen to Drew perform Chandler's piece. What a wonderful performance. That was Drew Whiting performing the work of Christopher Chandler, A Thing of Dream and Mist. Now I'd like to introduce Alexis Bacon, speak with her, have her introduce herself, talk about herself and her piece, Cradle. Hi, Alexis. How's it going?
Hi, going well.
Great to have you. Why don't you tell our audience a little bit about who you are and what you do, and a little bit about your piece, Cradle?
Sure. I'm a composer. I teach composition at Michigan State University. And this piece is a piece I wrote, sort of one of my earliest career pieces that still gets played a lot. I wrote this when I was still a grad student at University of Michigan. And it was also one of the first pieces I wrote that had live performance and electronics both. And the sound sources for this piece all came from recordings of a baby. I actually recorded my niece, who was 1.5 years at the time, and brought her into the studio and then had to chase her around with a microphone and try to get a few sounds and then try to get her to talk while I wasn't talking so I could just get her voice. So that was an adventure. But I had thought, like, oh, I'm going to get a lot of really cute, delicate sounds and write maybe sort of a cute, delicate piece. Instead, what I got was all of these like really primal shrieks that were really amazing, and then taken out of context, they just sort of took on this like very primal energy.
Having a 3-year-old myself, I completely understand.
Yeah, so it turned into a totally different kind of piece that I think some people find it funny and some people find it very anxiety inducing, and I think I like to think of it sort of like in a funny balance that sort of plays with our feelings about kids and about babies and that sort of thing.
I find the best pieces are those that have this sort of opposing emotional views of it. Fabulous. Well, let's hear it. Back to Drew with Cradle. Oh, it was fantastic. Yeah, I love how the saxophone sort of blended in with all the baby sounds. I definitely could hear the approaching of the children. So for our next piece that we have coming up, with a piece called "What Is Your World," um, by Spencer Arias. If we could bring in Spencer, I know he's somewhere in there in the background. Hey, Spencer, how's it going?
It's going well. Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's a pleasure for you to be here. So, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and your piece? What is your world?
Yeah. I'm Spencer Arias. I'm a composer based in East Lansing, Michigan. And a lot of my work tends to try to create some sort of sound world or experience that focuses on some sort of social issue or some sort of story of somebody. And what is your world? Really took that, and I wanted to focus specifically on members of the queer community. And so I actually asked, I think it was like over 100 people to respond to this question in a single word: "What is your world?" And then I wrote this piece that asks the saxophonist to answer these questions as well. And so it really is about the community and asking the performer to kind of put themselves out there and be honest about what is their world and what is important to them. So yeah.
Wow. Great. So you know what? Let's hear what he has to say. We'll go to Drew um, and have hear "What Is Your World" by Spencer Arias.
They're ready here for the next one, Drew. Okay. Here we go.
Unsteady, creativity, luminescent, theory, exploration, love, chaos, tradition, Joanna.
What a cool piece. I think I like the world that Drew is living in. I love his answers. Beautiful. So let's listen to the next and our final piece for today by Monte Taylor. His work is called Sigil to Amistad. Let's hear from Monte and see. Hi, Monte. How are you, man?
I'm good. How are you?
Great. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and about your piece, Sigil to Amistad?
Yeah, so I'm a composer down here in Austin, Texas, at University of Texas at Austin. This piece was commissioned by the University of Texas Landmark as part of the series. I'm sorry for the noise in the background. But it's for a series called Sound and Sculpture, which there were several pieces commissioned, like every year, basically, for like a certain part of their collection. In this case, it was a mural by Jose Parla called Amistad America, which is kind of the idea behind it is to kind of embrace the idea of multiculturalism and cultural fusion in Austin, Texas. In Austin, Texas specifically. Like the mural itself is in a building that's on the corner of Guadalupe and MLK. And so like the idea here was to try to represent the kind of conflict that comes with intercultural discourse and cultural fusion over time through a series of converging spectra represented in the electronics and how the saxophonist interacts with that sound world and eventually becomes one with it. So,
right, fabulous. Well, let's hear how all that comes together. And this is Drew Whiting performing Sigil to Amistad by Monte Taylor. What a fabulous finale. Yeah, thank you for Drew Whiting. And he's performing the piece Sigil to Amistad by Monte Taylor. Just fabulous performance. So I'd like to bring the whole composer cast into the room, and we'll bring in Drew into the conversation a little bit. I want to encourage all the audience out there, if you have a question or a comment that you want to make, feel free to type it in comments, and we'll ask it out to the composers. Everybody, what wonderful pieces. It's just really, I thought this was a fantastic program. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And I guess, what should I ask? I guess one of the questions I'm always interested in is about sort of program format and like how you thought your piece fit into the overall whole of a concert. You guys all liked where you were and how your pieces sounded next to each other?
I thought so. I thought Monty's piece was a great finisher, and everything else. I thought it was a nice balance how it flowed.
I agree. This was the last piece that I heard live before the world shut down. Literally premiered in March, and then the world shut down. So
was that at Tootie?
This was at NASA.
Oh.
And so to hear it played again, but on a concert is really quite interesting. It was nice to be in the middle, I think.
And so tell us a little bit about that. So it is a very different listening experience, like live and, sort of, virtual or recorded. We're live now, but most of our viewers will be seeing this as kind of a recorded fixed piece, right?
Yeah.
What was your impressions, like sort of differences and similarities?
I think the interesting part is when you're in your home, there's less distractions, right? For certain types of pieces, but I do think it depends on the piece, to be honest with you, and for this one, where I'm asking the performer to kind of express themselves with more than just the notes, but also with their, I'm asking them questions, right? And I'm asking them to respond with that. And I think that I don't know yet. I think that I'd have to see it again, to be honest with you, versus in a live performance where you're telling people who are in the audience. And so I'd be really curious to hear Drew's perspective of doing that to an empty room. Even though. Yeah.
Me too. Drew, why don't you come on in and we can hear what you think? He's out there somewhere, right? There we go. Hi, Drew. Drew, first, let me just say, great performance. I love every piece.
Oh, thank you so much. No, it was really, it's a pleasure to play all of your work. It was really just fantastic. And this is really something to look forward to with, how much of our lives have changed over the last year. So anytime I get to perform, I get to, be myself again. It's just such a welcomed opportunity. So thank you all for your wonderful music.
Yeah. And you know what? Let me, Spencer, why don't you reiterate your question? I think this is a great place to start. Kind of like, what is your world? What we're living in now, and how you express that in your piece.
Yeah, we were just curious, Drew. Performing this, I've only heard this performed twice now. And the first time was at NASA, and it was the last concert before the world shut down. And so to hear it again, but you're playing it to an empty room. So I'm curious, expressing, and putting yourself out there like that. I'm curious how that is to kind of be by yourself, but not really.
Yeah, no, it's such an odd thing. The piece itself, I feel, it's obviously very introspective. And so I think when I'm, to an empty room, it's kind of easy to do that, or at least it's a very safe situation to do that, I should say. I know other people are listening to me, but inevitably we're influenced by what's around us. And when I'm in an empty room, a big empty room, it's you can kind of just be in your own space and really just focus on that. Where it's like when you're live, obviously you're getting the energy of the audience, you're responding, even if they're not saying anything. It's like there's an energy there. And that's not there in the empty room. So you just have to go inward and really just find where that is for yourself, I think. So I love performing. It's a beautiful piece. Yeah.
Yeah, and so let me ask you a question. I guess this is to all the composers. Do any of you ever get backlash for writing progressive or political music, or anything that might be controversial?
I mean, I would say generally new music audiences aren't particularly reactionary, so it's not too much of an issue most of the time. I'd say probably the most backlash is from other composers and older composers, and I think they have more of a reaction to the music than the political message itself, because if anything that they don't like musically, they take that as an expression of something they don't like politically sometimes, and vice versa. So that's just my experience, though.
What's been your experience, Alexis?
Well, yeah, that's hard for me to answer because I don't think of most of my music as being like overtly political. So no, I've never gotten any particular backlash over any message in my music. I mean, there might be some sort of underlying political messages in some things I've written, but I don't think it's. Nobody's ever walked out or anything. So if they do, they don't tell me.
Yeah, I don't know if I've ever been like. I guess maybe like when I had the idea for this piece, there was other queer composers or saxophonists rather, who I think might have not wanted to be involved, but more so just because they don't want to be associated, like not that they don't want to be associated with their queerness, but they don't want their queerness to be like central to them, like to their ethos as a performer. And I think that was definitely something that came up at NASA when like talking to people in the reaction of the piece. But that said, I haven't heard anything but positivity from at least from this piece that I did.
Yeah, I'll jump in with that. With Morgan asked, like, Morgan's one of my students and is working on the pieces and is going to perform on their senior recital. So it was, I'm sure that was in front of their mind when they asked that, and I know they're really looking forward to performing it.
Well, I'm happy to talk with them anytime.
That's awesome.
And Drew, have you ever performed a piece that you've had like any particular? And I'm talking about like anything like that had like a visceral sort of reaction from the audience. Yeah,
actually, one of the first pieces of electronic music I ever performed by Robin Heitfitz, "Caught in the Glare" for alto sax and electronics. It's a really it's a wonderful piece. It really got me out of my box because there's a moment in it. It recaps a time in the composer's life where they lived in Israel and they survived a suicide bombing attack. And the title "Caught in the Glare" comes from they were barricaded on a bus and the attacker was running and glaring, fiercely. And in the middle of the piece, I'm asked to do that to the audience.
Oh well.
And it's something where you have to number one embody that kind of violence, and then also I'm improvising while doing it. And then later in the piece, I have to, after the electronics become more more catastrophic, I have to act like I'm in pain. I have to really like kind of theatrically work this out. And I remember I performed it in the basement of a little vegan restaurant in Urbana, Illinois, and it was like a packed little, and it was just so visceral where it's like I'm biting the reed, I'm screaming through my saxophone, and just you really feel that. But I think that people, whether it's a political statement or if it's something just very visceral, I think if you put it out there, they're so appreciative that you're willing to put yourself out there that way, that you're willing to be that vulnerable. And I think people respond to that, just as we respond to great actors on stage when they really embody a character. And that's, I think, what we're called to do as performers.
Yeah, I kind of agree. I've definitely produced and presented some programs in which have definitely elicited a pretty dramatic response from people, but more so, they weren't opposed to the actual art of it, but more of the expression of which you're trying to get across. I think I had one piece once where it was also actually from another composer who was upset by the performance take that a musician took, but I think that was kind of a different story. But I think it's so funny when I saw that question. I think that this is as a composer, and any of the composers can chime in if you have other thoughts. But when we're writing, sometimes we have this idea that maybe trying to express the idea or thought that we have might not be accepted or conducive to an audience. And I have found as a producer that the braver you are and the more that you put yourself out there, the more the audience sort of kind of comes to you and respects what you're doing.
I would agree with that, actually, and that's been my experience. I think any backlash that I've ever gotten has never been from the audience, at least not to my face. It's always been from a composer, and I feel like it's usually not even about what the piece is saying, and it's usually something else that's silly that is just at that point just subjective, right? And I just see it as part of being part of the field, right? Is not everyone's going to like everything that you do, and that can be challenging, but it's it's part of it. And I think that the thing that we can do as composers is just remember that composers are people, and what we do, and just be respectful of musical choices, and that value, like your musical values might be different than somebody else's musical values, and that doesn't mean either is wrong per se. It just is different.
Well, for me, I've always found that to be a good composer, you need to be able to take critical feedback and be able to say oh, that's something I need to listen to and think about for the next piece. And someone's like, yeah, great, dude. You got an opinion too. I don't know. I definitely want to keep encouraging the audience out there. If you're listening, we welcome any sort of questions. I guess I've been asking this question a couple of times now during these virtual concerts, and I would like to just pose it to the composers again. It's sort of and to Drew. What do you think of these virtual concerts? The music that they're performing. The experience, stuff that, talk about criticism. I am totally ears open for this, I would rather you did better.
I mean, I would say the main thing that I miss from real concerts overall is socializing. And I mean, you get that a little bit with comment sections and things, but it's not really the same. But one of the advantages, which I think that some people treat as a disadvantage but I think is actually an advantage, is you can kind of choose your level of participation or active engagement with something. And so I think some people see that as a downside, that people aren't all sitting and focusing on a piece of music. But at the same time, I'd say most of the virtual concerts I've seen have actually been pretty good, pretty well curated and well produced and things. But every now and then you have a piece that's not so great. And it's great to not have to just sit there and not pretend that I'm not pulling out my phone, for example. And maybe that sounds rude, but I think that's honestly an advantage of the format.
Anybody else?
I really like. I mean, I can't if I'm performing. Obviously, this is not something I can experience. But if I'm listening to one, I love the real time feedback. I just think it's so great to see like what someone else, how someone else experiences a piece. Obviously, I'm listening and I'm engaged with that. But when someone makes a comment, like then all of a sudden I'm tuned into that and I'm like, ooh, I totally didn't hear that, but now I get that, and it totally changes my experience with that. So I welcome that. I think that's actually a really great thing, and it makes, I think, in some ways it's almost more communal. Like we can actually talk to each other during this. We don't have to just sit there and shut up and be quiet. Like we can actually respond as a community in real time. I think that's actually a really positive thing. When we go back to real in-person concerts, I don't know. I think that might be a cool thing if like it was a closed circuit thing and you could like have, you know, you're not disturbing others, right? But that you can have that. I think that'd be a really cool thing.
I think that'd be really cool too, actually, to have like a text-friendly concert.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
Well, and but like specifically, like you're texting with the other people in the audience who are all, you know, engaging with it, and I kind of like that oh, I liked this moment. This was because it actually asks you to like when someone says, hey, I liked this moment, maybe like other people might be like, oh wait, what was it that they liked, and you have that kind of like record of when it happened to then be like, oh, so like let's talk about it. Why you have something to talk about afterwards. It's like, well, why did you like that moment? And I think that's really interesting. Maybe it could even, for the performer's sake, like have a little screen on the side so you can see when it happens.
Well, I was about to say it's kind of like you know, the sort of difference between a classical concert and a jazz concert, right? I mean, a jazz concert is much more vocal and people are talking to each other and they might make a comment here and there and so forth. They're still listening, you know, it's not like they're separated from the performance, but it's more interactive, right? I mean, it's music, right? We can multitask in general.
I definitely am I definitely prefer the like the concerts in bars or something like that than in a concert hall, generally speaking. And that's not for every case, but for like a lot of situations, I actually prefer that more laid back more laid back feel. And for me, it's just because I'm a pretty laid back person, and I don't know, I like to not have to be like at attention all the time, and there's this performative aspect of being at a concert, right, where you have to look like you're paying attention, you have to look like you're not dozing off, you have to, you know, be perfectly engaged. And we also all have very busy lives outside of that one moment, and you know, to the earlier point, like not everybody's gonna like everything, and I think that's okay. You know, it's not about respecting. It's you showed up. That's already showing a lot of respect that you're giving someone your time. I'm not saying that as performers you have to like automatically hold people to attention for a long time. But I just being more accepting of that people's lives are busy, and classical music and contemporary music is challenging, and it's challenging not because it is different, but it's because of the expectations of engaging with it, and I think that's what makes it challenging. And sometimes like we don't expect that in other types of music, and that I think that can be frustrating.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's so funny, you know, they were talking about sort of writing conflicting music or something, and I have to admit, when I write or produce, part of my goal almost is to sort of elicit a reaction from the audience. Not like when I say reaction, I don't mean like to sort of torture them and like, oh, you know, but more like, you know, oh, they thought this was funny, you know, this was triumphant and they wanted to clap. You know, I kind of almost always love when there's a piece that's, you know, between two movements and it stops and then people start clapping just like from exuberance. And you know, you can see there's, no, it's not the end of the piece. But for me, I'm just like, they love it. You know, let them go. That's, you know, I sort of want to hear the the visceral sort of emotion that we evoke with our works. I want to again encourage anybody out there, if you want some last questions and sort of like that would be great. Drew, I mean, I want to definitely thank you. One of when we put this project together, we put out a call for works, and I just want to thank Drew. Like, we have a limited amount of time. We can only pick everything. We can't pick everything. We always would want to include as many composers as you possibly can, and that's been one of my goals. I don't know if anybody knows my 60 by 60 project, but that I included 60 composers. So like, the more I can stuff in, the better. But there's only so much you can do in a period of time. And when we completed this call, Drew was just like, "Oh, there's so many great pieces. I wish we could play more." I was like, "If you want, we can." And so this is our second concert, and because we played double the amount of pieces. And Drew, I just want to thank you for all your effort and your hard work for this. You did a fantastic job. Thank you.
No, thank you. And it's, there's so much effort that goes into this, obviously, from your end, from the call, the scores to reviewing the pieces. I mean, so many people are involved in this. And so I think for me, it was just, there's so much great work that I got to listen to. And it was hard to say, well, how can I, I love Spencer's piece and I love Monte's piece. They're two very different things. How can I, and they call for different things. They call for a different kind of performing. How can I say one is better or worse? I can't do that, because to me, I really go for the reaction I have to the piece and whether I think hey, this is something I really would like to do. And there was just a lot of work I really wanted to play. So I was like, great, let's just do more.
Well, thank you. And with that said, let me start thanking the sort of huge body of people that are out there. First, I want to thank the engineers at the University of Wisconsin Oshkosh, Nathan Edwards, Director of Recording and Technology, and AJ Ram, Music Hall's Facilities Director. We're streaming from the Music Hall and Arts Communication Center at the University of Wisconsin Oshkosh, and I can't. It's when the people on the ground are doing their thing, it definitely shows. Drew is a beautiful sound, and it definitely comes forward from you guys there in Wisconsin. I also want to thank Virtual Concert Halls and their engineers. Igor and Fedor and Anna, Virtual Concert Halls has been supporting this project, and they're just fantastic. Also in the background is New Music Engine, who helps us facilitate the scores and the sort of judging and all that, and with Mike McFerrin and Tony Reimer. That's just a little bit of the team and some of the administrative stuff that goes to putting all these things together. And then I guess, look, I gotta thank the composers. These are all great works. It's being a composer myself, I understand, as you write things, it's hard to get out there, and it's especially in these times, I think we need to put a lot of emphasis on sort of reaching out to audiences, in any way we can. Thank you, everybody.